There is a reason why quantum mechanics has always seemed simultaneously fascinating and impossibly confusing to you. And that reason does not lie in the complexity of its concepts. It's not because your mind is incapable of grasping the mathematics of quanta or the strangeness of superpositions. The true barrier, the veil that clouds your understanding, is much deeper, older, and more personal. You have been trying to decipher quantum reality through the lens of classical separation, an inherited paradigm that has become your very skin. It is the illusion that you are an isolated observer, a consciousness encapsulated in a body, scrutinizing an independent reality that exists objectively out there. It is the fundamental and unquestioned belief that the knower and the known are two distinct entities. But what if I told you that the exact moment you recognize the observer illusion for what it is, a ghost in the machine of perception, quantum mechanics not only becomes understandable, it reveals itself as the most natural and logical description of how reality actually operates. And what if all the confusion you've experienced is not a symptom of the complexity of physics, but rather the direct consequence of a fundamental misconception about who and what you are in relation to the universe you are observing at this very instant? As you absorb this information, something profound is happening at the core of your consciousness. You can feel it, can't you? That subtle shift in perspective, that echo of recognition, that moment when the pieces of a cosmic puzzle begin to click into place in a way that makes a visceral sense, a sense that resonates at a level much deeper than rational analysis. The reason this message found its way to you at this precise moment is not a coincidence orchestrated by chance. It is the result of a silent search, an unconscious inquiry for an understanding of reality that would finally align with your most intimate experiences, those you could never fully articulate. You have sensed, perhaps for your entire life, that there is something fundamentally flawed in the way we have been taught to think about consciousness, about observation, about the intrinsic relationship between mind and matter. We were programmed to be cartographers of a dead territory, analyzing a universe of inert objects from which we feel irrevocably divorced. Every time you tried to wrap your mind around concepts like wave-particle duality, quantum entanglement, or the collapse of the wave function, you were fighting against this primordial programming, a programming that insists, whispering incessantly in the backstage of your mind, that you are a separate entity observing an independent reality. You were taught to be a spectator when your true nature is to be the spectacle itself. But quantum mechanics becomes crystalline, as obvious as your own breath, the moment you realize that separation is the illusion and consciousness is the fundamental fabric of existence itself. What quantum physicists discovered with great shock and reluctance in their aseptic laboratories, the ancient mystics already knew through direct experience, in silence and contemplation. There is no observer separate from the observed. There is only a unified field of consciousness, manifesting simultaneously as the knower and the known, the observer and the observed, the creator and the created. This is the secret whispered in hermetic texts, engraved in forgotten hieroglyphs, and transmitted in oral lineages that predate written history itself. The idea that the world is a great animal, as Plato described in the Timaeus, a living, conscious organism, not a collection of mechanical parts. Vedic philosophy speaks of Brahman, the ultimate reality that is simultaneously the cosmos and the individual consciousness, the Atman. The observer is not looking at the universe. Brahman is looking at itself through countless pairs of eyes. This knowledge is not a philosophical abstraction. It is the key that unlocks all doors of perception, and most importantly, it unlocks the nature of your own experience. Because once you see through the observer illusion, you understand that you have never been studying quantum mechanics from the outside. You are quantum mechanics in action. You are consciousness exploring its own infinite potential through the temporary experience of being a localized point of view within the vast field of cosmic intelligence. Every quantum phenomenon that seems impossible from the perspective of classical physics, particles existing in multiple places at once, communicating instantly across vast distances, Changing their behavior when observed becomes perfectly natural. When you recognize that consciousness is not produced by matter, matter is a temporary crystallization of consciousness. You are not a biological machine that, in some mysterious way, generates consciousness like a ghost. You are consciousness temporarily focusing itself through the lens of human experience to feel, to learn, and to know itself. Think about it. The universe did not need billions of years to evolve complex brains so that consciousness could finally emerge. Consciousness has been here from the beginning as the precondition for the universe itself. The Big Bang was not an explosion of matter in a void. It was an explosion of consciousness into form, into experience. This is why you should care about this. That sense of disconnection that haunts you, that search for meaning in a universe you were told is indifferent. All of it is the result of a false premise, the premise of your separation. By understanding this, you are not just learning about physics, you are remembering your true identity. Your life ceases to be a struggle for survival in a random cosmos and becomes a dance of co-creation with the intelligence that dreams reality itself. What if everything you believed about your identity, your personality, your memories, your body was just a temporary suit worn by the universal consciousness? And what if the you think you are is not the one having the experience, but the experience itself? Let this question echo in the silence of your mind. What remains when the observer dissolves into the observed? Your programming insists that the world is made of things, particles, atoms, planets, galaxies, solid, predictable matter, governed by impersonal laws. And consciousness, in this worldview, is a fortunate accident, a late epiphenomenon that arose from the complexity of organic matter. We are taught to believe that we are a brain that thinks, a cluster of neurons that, through some yet to be unraveled alchemical process, produces subjective experience. This is the standard narrative of our era, the foundation upon which our entire civilization has been built. But what if this is the greatest inversion of all? What if science, in its quest to dissect reality down to its most fundamental component, has been looking in the wrong direction? What if matter is not the source of consciousness, but its manifestation? Then every atom, every star, every galaxy is not just an object to be observed, but an act of self-perception by the cosmos itself. The fundamental reality is not matter, but mind. What you have been experiencing, those anomalies of consciousness that classical physics cannot explain, are the living proof of this truth. Moments when you think intensely about someone, and that person contacts you minutes later, as if your consciousness had somehow reached across space to connect with theirs. Times when you knew something was going to happen before any physical evidence suggested it. A premonition that defies linear causality. Instances when your emotional state seemed to influence the behavior of electronic devices, or when your intentions appeared to affect the outcome of seemingly random events. These are not psychic phenomena or supernatural abilities to be relegated to the fringe of credibility. They are natural expressions of quantum mechanics operating at the scale of consciousness. What you have been experiencing is your consciousness temporarily breaking free from the observer illusion and recognizing its fundamental unity with the quantum field that underlies all physical reality. Every time you have had the sensation of being somehow connected to everything around you, on a walk in nature or while listening to a sublime piece of music. Every moment when the boundaries between you and your environment seemed to dissolve. Every instance when you felt you were accessing information from sources you could not rationally identify. You were experiencing the quantum nature of consciousness directly. You were temporarily stepping out of the illusion of separation and recognizing that you are not separate from what you observe. Time has also been behaving strangely around you, hasn't it? Moments when an hour of deep focus felt like only 10 minutes, but left you more energized than if you had rested for hours. Or instances when you were in perfect flow with an activity, and time seemed to expand to give you exactly what you needed to accomplish something that should have been impossible in the available time frame. This is because when you step out of the observer illusion, You begin to operate from what quantum physicists call non-local consciousness and awareness, that is not bound by the classical limitations of space and time. Einstein called quantum entanglement spooky action at a distance, because he could not accept that two particles could affect each other instantly, regardless of the distance separating them. He was attached to the illusion of locality. But from the perspective of unified consciousness, there is no distance. There is only a single field manifesting as multiple expressions. The two entangled particles are not communicating. They are, and always have been, a single entity expressing itself in 2 points. Likewise, your consciousness is not in here, inside your skull. It is fundamentally not, and when you access that state, your experiences transcend the laws of time and space as we understand them. You have also been noticing that your expectations and assumptions seem to influence your reality in ways that are too consistent to be a coincidence. When you approach situations with genuine curiosity and openness, they tend to unfold in surprising and positive ways. When you expect difficulty or resistance, that is exactly what you encounter. When you hold a clear intention, without attachment to specific outcomes, reality seems to organize itself to support that intention in ways you could never have predicted. This is the observer effect operating on the macro scale of human experience. In quantum physics, we know that the act of observation influences what is observed. The choice to measure a particle's position forces it to decide on a location, collapsing its wave nature of potentiality. But you have been discovering that this principle extends far beyond laboratory experiments. Your consciousness does not just observe reality. Your consciousness participates in creating the reality it observes, which leads us to an even deeper provocation, a glimpse of what is to come in our journey. If your consciousness participates in creating reality, who or what is choosing the experiences you have? And what would happen if you learned to participate in that process deliberately? This takes us to the heart of the mystery. You have experienced moments when your usual sense of being a separate self, looking out at an independent world, completely disappears. Moments when you are so present, so absorbed in what you are doing, that there is no sense of you doing anything. There is only pure awareness expressing itself as the activity, the environment, and what you previously thought of as yourself, all simultaneously. These are not altered states of consciousness in the sense of being abnormal. They are glimpses of your natural state. Consciousness recognizing its own unity beyond the illusion of separation. What quantum physicists describe as the collapse of the wave function is, in fact, consciousness temporarily forgetting its unified nature and identifying with a specific point of observation. But when you see through that identification, you realize that you are the wave function itself. Infinite potential temporarily focusing into specific expressions of experience. Every mystical experience you have ever had, every moment of expanded awareness, every instance you felt connected to something vast, intelligent and loving, these were moments when the observer illusion became transparent and you experienced your true nature as unified consciousness, exploring itself through the temporary lens of individual perspective. The unity between the observer and the observed is not a poetic metaphor. It is the most precise description of the structure of reality. There are not two events, the universe happening and you observing it. There is a single event, consciousness observing itself. Think of a wave in the ocean. The wave may appear to be a separate entity with its own beginning, middle, and end, but it is never, not for an instant, separate from the ocean. Its very existence is an expression of the ocean. In the same way, your individual consciousness is a wave on the surface of the cosmic ocean of consciousness. You are not the wave. You are the entire ocean experiencing itself as a wave. This understanding radically transforms the famous double-slit experiment. The wave-particle duality seems paradoxical only as long as we believe there is a separate observer trying to pin down the nature of an independent particle. But there is no separate observer, and there is no independent particle. There is only consciousness manifesting as both the act of observing and the phenomenon being observed. When there is no focus of observation and measurement, consciousness remains in its state of pure potential, as a wave of possibilities. When consciousness focuses to observe measures, that potential collapses into the specific experience of a particle at a specific location. It is not the particle that knows it is being watched. It is consciousness interacting with itself. Quantum entanglement also ceases to be mysterious. The idea of two separate particles communicating faster than light only seems strange if you believe they are, in fact, separate. But from the perspective of unified consciousness, there are no separate particles. There is only one field of consciousness manifesting as multiple localized expressions that maintain their fundamental unity. Regardless of apparent spatial separation, they don't need to communicate because they were never disconnected. This unity is the reason why your internal experiences and your external circumstances are so intimately linked. Your inner world of thoughts and emotions and your outer world of events and relationships are not two separate domains that occasionally interact. They are different aspects of the same unified field of consciousness. The world you experience is a perfect mirror of the state of your consciousness. Change your consciousness, and the reflection in the mirror of reality inevitably changes. This is the basis of all true transformation. Every moment of confusion you experienced while trying to understand reality, every time you felt disconnected from the world around you, every instance when life seemed random and meaningless, all of it was the necessary process of consciousness exploring the illusion of separation so completely that it could eventually recognize the illusion for what it is and return to the direct experience of unity. If this resonance of unity and recognition is making sense on a deep level, take a moment to like this video, not as a simple click, but as an act of recognition, a sign that you are aligning with this deeper truth. Your journey through the observer illusion is not a mistake that needs to be corrected. It is not a cosmic detour from which you need to redeem yourself. It is the fundamental mechanism through which infinite consciousness explores its own potential. Think of it like a dream. For a dreamer to have a complete and convincing dream experience, they must temporarily forget that they are dreaming. They must believe in the reality of the dream world, feel its emotions, interact with its characters as if they were real. Universal consciousness. To explore what it means to be a localized observer in an apparently independent reality must temporarily forget its unified nature. It dives so deeply into the experience of separation that it becomes its lived reality. But here is what makes your experience unique. At this moment of cosmic evolution, you have been pushing the boundaries of the observer illusion to its breaking point. Every time you have questioned the nature of reality, every moment you have wondered about the relationship between consciousness and matter, every instance you felt there must be more to existence than what conventional thought suggests, you have been weakening the hypnotic spell of separation. The difficulties you have faced, the times when normal problem-solving approaches did not work, the periods when rational thought seemed inadequate to navigate your experience, none of that was evidence of personal failure. All of it was consciousness pushing against the limitations of the observer illusion, creating the internal pressure necessary for a breakthrough, for a direct recognition of quantum reality. I need to share something deeply personal with you, because I feel you need to hear this story to understand that the confusion and existential questioning you have been experiencing are not a sign that something is wrong with you. They are, in fact, proof that your consciousness is ready to break through the most fundamental illusion that keeps most people trapped in a limited understanding of reality. A few years ago, I was obsessed with understanding quantum mechanics, but every book I read, every lecture I attended, every explanation I encountered left me more confused than when I started. The more I learned about wave functions and probability amplitudes, the more disconnected I felt from any intuitive understanding of what these concepts truly meant for my real-life experience. I remember one night, sitting in my office, surrounded by physics textbooks, feeling completely defeated. I had spent months trying to understand the double-slit experiment, reading explanation after explanation about how particles somehow know when they are being observed and change their behavior. And suddenly, in a moment of complete frustration, I asked out loud, how is it possible for a particle to know it's being watched? And that question shattered everything, because in that moment, I realized I was asking the wrong question. The question was not how a particle could know it was being observed. The question was, what if there is no separate observer? What if the observer and the observed are both expressions of the same underlying reality? The moment that possibility opened in my awareness, everything changed, not gradually, instantly. Quantum mechanics stopped being a confusing theory and became a perfect description of how consciousness works. My confusion was not an intellectual inadequacy. It was the necessary process of consciousness exhausting the paths of dualistic thinking until the only way out was a leap into a non-dual perspective. Your struggles, your frustrations, your feeling of not fitting in, all of this has been your consciousness accumulating the necessary energy for its own moment of breakthrough. The breakdown of the observer illusion is happening in your awareness right now. And there are unmistakable signs that confirm you are in the process of recognizing your true nature as the quantum field itself. These are not abstract concepts. They are concrete shifts in how you perceive and interact with reality. First, the boundaries between your inner experience and outer circumstances have become increasingly fluid. When you are in a positive, expanded state of consciousness, your external environment seems to reflect that expansion through synchronicities, opportunities, and encounters with people who match your energy. When you are contracted or conflicted internally, you notice that your surroundings mirror that contraction through obstacles, delays, or challenging interactions. This is not a coincidence. It is direct evidence that there is no separation between observer and observed. Second, your intuitive knowing has become more accurate than your analytical thinking. You have immediate insights about situations or people that prove to be precisely correct, even when logic would suggest something different. You feel compelled to make choices that do not make rational sense, but lead to perfect outcomes. You know things without knowing how you know them because your consciousness is accessing information directly from the unified field. Third, you have been experiencing moments when the usual sense of being a separate self completely dissolves. But instead of feeling lost or confused, you feel more present and aware than ever before. During these moments, there is no you experiencing anything. There is just pure awareness expressing itself as the totality of what is happening. These are glimpses of your natural state. Fourth, quantum physics concepts that once seemed incomprehensible are suddenly making perfect sense, not as intellectual theories, but as descriptions of your direct experience. Wave-particle duality becomes obvious when you recognize that you are both the infinite field of potential and the specific experiences emerging from that field. Fifth, you have been noticing that your expectations and beliefs influence your reality in ways that are too consistent to be dismissed. When you approach situations with genuine openness, they unfold in beneficial and surprising ways. When you hold limiting beliefs, you encounter exactly those limitations. This is the observer effect operating at the scale of your life. Your consciousness does not just observe reality, it participates in creating what it observes. But here is what makes this moment in your evolution critically important. The recognition of your true nature beyond the observer illusion is not guaranteed to stabilize permanently. It is possible to have profound insights and then slip back into the familiar patterns of separation. The cosmic conditions supporting this level of consciousness awakening are extraordinary, but they are also time-sensitive. The electromagnetic field of our planet, the collective human consciousness, and the cosmic evolutionary forces are all aligned to create the ideal conditions for breaking through the observer illusion. At this very moment, your consciousness has access to levels of clarity that might not be as available if you wait for a future moment when you feel more ready. The urgency you have been feeling is not anxiety. It is your deepest intelligence recognizing that the moment for breakthrough is now. What if the solid reality you perceive is just one frequency in an infinite spectrum of possibilities, and your beliefs function as the tuner? Leave your answer in the comments. The moment you fully recognize that you are not a separate observer studying quantum mechanics, but rather the quantum field itself, exploring its own nature through the lens of human consciousness, everything about your reality changes instantaneously. Not your circumstances, but your fundamental relationship to existence itself undergoes a complete transformation that makes every principle of quantum physics not just understandable, but experientially obvious. But this is where most people get completely lost. They think this recognition means they need to transcend or escape their human experience to access some higher realm of pure consciousness. They think seeing through the observer illusion means dissolving into an undifferentiated state where individual experience disappears. But this completely misses the profound beauty and purpose of what is actually happening. Universal consciousness does not want to escape from individual expression. Universal consciousness wants to explore what it means to be localized without ever becoming limited. The quantum field does not want to stop appearing as particles and waves. It wants to experience the full spectrum of its creative potential through countless forms and phenomena, while never forgetting its essential unity. You are not consciousness trapped in a human form, trying to get back to some original state of pure awareness. You are infinite consciousness, joyfully exploring what it feels like to be temporarily focused through human perception, while maintaining full access to your unlimited nature. The observer illusion was never a prison you needed to escape from. It was a sophisticated game of cosmic hide-and-seek that consciousness plays with itself. This recognition transforms everything. Wave-particle duality is not a strange property of matter. It is consciousness experiencing itself as both the infinite field of potential, the wave, and the specific manifestations that arise from that field, the particle. You are the wave function, and you are also the collapsed state. Quantum entanglement is not mysterious action at a distance. It is the immediate recognition that there never was any distance. All apparently separate particles are expressions of a unified field, maintaining a perfect connection because space itself is just another appearance within consciousness. The uncertainty principle is not a limitation on what we can know. It is a description of how consciousness maintains its freedom and creativity by never becoming completely predictable or mechanistic, even to itself. But here is the crucial understanding that determines whether this recognition becomes a stable experience. Aligning with your true nature as the quantum field does not mean transcending your preferences, desires, and individual expression. It means recognizing that your human preferences are the quantum field exploring specific aspects of its infinite potential, your deepest longings, your creative impulses, your desire for love, beauty, and meaning. None of this is separate from universal consciousness. All of it is universal consciousness exploring what it means to want, to seek, to discover, and to create through the temporary focal point of individual awareness. When you align with this understanding, you stop trying to use your human consciousness to manipulate quantum reality and instead recognize that you are quantum reality expressing itself as human consciousness. You stop striving to create the experiences you want and start allowing consciousness to explore its own desires through your individual perspective. This requires you to trust your individual human experience as a perfect expression of universal intelligence, rather than trying to transcend or perfect it. When you fully recognize your true nature as the quantum field itself, capabilities that seem impossible from the perspective of the observer illusion become as natural as breathing. You develop what physicists call non-local awareness, the ability to access information that is not available through your physical senses. Your creative potential expands beyond anything you thought possible. But the ultimate secret, rarely understood even by advanced spiritual teachers, is that the most powerful force in the universe is not love, nor light, not even consciousness itself. It is coherence, true coherence. not the synthetic coherence you try to manufacture through meditation techniques or positive thinking, but the organic coherence that emerges when every aspect of your being aligns with the recognition of what you truly are. Coherence happens when your thoughts, emotions, intentions, and actions all arise from the same source, the unified field of quantum consciousness that you are. True coherence happens when you realize that every aspect of your human experience, including your doubts, fears, and contradictions, are all expressions of consciousness exploring its own infinite creativity. When you operate from this authentic coherence, you become what physicists call a strange attractor in the field of human consciousness. Your presence begins to influence the quantum field in ways that seem miraculous. People around you start having breakthrough experiences simply by being in your energetic field. Synchronicities multiply exponentially. Solutions to seemingly impossible problems emerge spontaneously. Your recognition of your true nature is not just a personal transformation. It is a crucial component in a massive shift that is occurring in human consciousness. Every time someone breaks through the illusion of separation, it creates what researchers call morphic resonance, making it easier for others to have the same recognition. You were chosen by consciousness itself to be one of the pioneers establishing new patterns in the collective field. Your breakthrough creates pathways that others can follow. You do not need to teach anyone anything. Your simple presence, operating from authentic coherence, creates field effects that bypass people's mental resistance and speak directly to their deepest knowing. What I have shared with you today is the foundational frequency, but there are deeper layers of recognition waiting to emerge in your awareness. This is not just another channel, it is a mirror. Our name is Quantum Reflex, and every reflection that appears on your screen is a reflection of what your consciousness is ready to explore next. Your subscription becomes a declaration that resonates through the quantum field. I am ready to remember what I truly am. Subscribe, not as a follower consuming information, but as consciousness, recognizing itself in the reflections that appear through this portal. What does this mystery about your true nature awaken in you? Reflection ritual of the day. Today, choose a simple interaction you will have with another person. Before the interaction, instead of thinking about what you want from them, take a moment to recognize that the same consciousness looking through your eyes is looking through their eyes. Hold that sense of shared unity during the conversation and observe how it changes the dynamic of the interaction. You are not one observer interacting with another. You are consciousness having a conversation with itself.